I was born on a farm in Wilton, Wisconsin. I was probably just a baby, and then we moved to Rhinelander. It was a tar paper shack house, and there was Colleen and Dennis and Jimmy and me that lived with my mom and dad, and my grandma and grandpa had a house across the road, and we lived there till I was about 4, and we moved on. My dad had built a house for us in Rhinelander, so we had acreage there, and we lived in that. Ray was born in a tar paper shack, and we moved after he was born over to the house. My dad, he worked cutting pulp, and that was his livelihood, and he ran machinery. And my mom, of course, was a good housekeeper and baker and cook. Colleen and Jimmy and Dennis went to school. Of course, I couldn't go to school because I was too young. And we had a good life. We moved from Rhinelander, Wisconsin to Minnesota, and we lived on 7th Street, 1452 East 7th, and Ethel was a baby there, and I went to Dean School, and I wanted to go to kindergarten, but I was too old because I was 6 years old, so I had to go to 1st grade. And I never I didn't want to do it. And when my mom found out I came home, instead of staying in school, she walked me down to school and slapped me a good one to make me go. So, and then we moved from 7th Street to Maryland, 1885 East Maryland, and that's where Larry was born. And we all went to Hayden Heights School, and then after 8th grade, 9th grade, I went to Dean School, and then from Dean School, I went to Johnson. Of course, it's the old Johnson. And from then, well, my first job was working in a drive-in, and it was Conlon's. It was out by Minnehaha drive-in, and I was a car hop. I was 15 when I went there. I walked from Maryland to Minnehaha. I cut through the Harvester. It was a Harvester. It was called Harvester building. But you had to walk through the weeds and everything to go. My mom didn't want me to do that, but that was my first job. Well, I babysat a lot, but that was my first job. And then I went to, after that, I went to Woolworths downtown St. Paul, and I was still 15. And they found out I was 15, so I had to quit, you know. And then I went to Golden Rule, the same thing. I was 15, so I had to go just do my babysitting. And then in 1952, I went down and I applied at Mickey's Diner in St. Paul, and I got a job there. I was supposed to be a waitress, but I ended up the cook didn't show up, so I ended up being a cook. And I worked there till 1955. And after that, well, I had all my children in between. Yeah, I worked at Sedine's, for a couple years. And then from Sedin's I went to Tocumpelas, and I worked there. And then I seen that Robert's on arcade was closer to home because I had to walk to work. I always walked to work from Jenks. And I worked at, then I went and applied, and it just happened that the person that owned the restaurant, Robert, was my old union secretary. You know, he took my union dues. He owned the restaurant, so he hired me right away. So then I started there working full time. In 1971, I married John, and the kids were all really happy because Gene wanted me to marry him, and Dianne wanted him to marry me, and I ended up marrying him. Yeah, and we ran out of bread at the restaurant, and so I ran across to get extra bread. And when I was there, Alice, the owner, had just gotten back to the store because she had a heart attack, and so and she was just her first couple days there and all of a sudden here these 4 guys come walking in with shotguns, and they wanted her to open the register, and she was so nervous she couldn't open the register, and finally one of the guys opened the register and took her money. So then they went down Arcade Street, and the cops caught them. There was 4 of them, and Alice and I had to go to court, and they said, "Can you identify the robbers?" They got prison time for robbing her because they had all this equipment where they took their fingerprints and stuff off the cash register. When did we move to Lindstrom? In 1987. Well, then I got a job working at the hospital, and I worked there for 10 years. I was in charge of the kitchen and menus, and the dietitian and I worked together, and I did all the ordering for the hospital, the food. And yeah, it was an interesting job. We had a cafeteria where I had to make food for the nurses and the doctors. And if someone come in and wanted to eat, we had a cafeteria. And then the nursing home, we had 40-bed nursing home. And all these older people always said certain things they always liked to have, like lutefisk or fish, and I'd make it a point to make something that they liked. So then when I retired, the hospital went to, they sold out, went to Fairview in Wyoming. And the nursing home they took the nursing home out of there. They didn't have the nursing home anymore. And all these people thought, because I retired, that I caused that. You know, they were all upset with me. But of course, I have nothing to do with that. Yeah. Well, my brother and I, my brothers, we went fishing over to Beaver Lake. Got a lot of bullheads. Bring them home, and Mom would fry them up for supper. And then another thing is, I always like to go fishing with anyone that would like to go. I even took Dianne on a boat. She was going to row the boat, and I was fishing and she was reading her book, and then she's rowing the boat, and we got all the way almost to where the place we wanted to land, and we ended up going all the way back. So I had to take the oars and row back home, back to where we were. Dianne was not very good at rowing a boat. I did a lot of things with my grandchildren. Took them to the cabin. Heather, Donnie, DJ, and David and Angie, Abby and Daniel, and Jimmy. And we all had a good time, great times at the cabin. Other than that, all I did was like to fish and taught them how to fish, but none of them ever fished after that. They were too lazy. And John we were married, and John and I did a lot of traveling around, fishing and camping out, and went to Canada and Alaska. And we caught a lot of salmon. I caught a 78-pound salmon. And my brother Jim and Eddie, his son, and Walt Gersey, we all had a real great time. We camped out, saw moose, and was a wonderful time being with my brother. And I went to the casino with Kevin, and I won a lot of money. And it was because Kevin was praying for me. Yep, Kevin is my nephew. I used to take him to the cabin too, and we had a great time fishing. And John and I, we did a lot of traveling, all different places to go fishing. We did a lot of fishing, and that was our enjoyment. Well, we live in Grantsburg, Wisconsin. It's a log home. We see bear and deer, animals. It's a very, very quiet, serene place to live. And kids always want us to go down to the cities, and that's a crazy place to live. So we're happy where we're at. My grandchildren and my great-grandchildren all have good work ethics, and they all they love each other, and they don't have any disparaging marks. And I hope they always stay like that, because that's life. You should always love your family and get everything out in the open and be good to each other and love each other.